Yeah. So, welcome to World in a Frame, our little movie discussion group where we get together and talk about movies. My name is Rasmus and I'm from Denmark.
Hi, I'm Thomas and I'm from Austria.
I'm Philip, I'm from Russia.
I'm Risha. I'm from the United Kingdom. I kept saying London before, and I realized I was the only one giving the city, so sorry about that.
My city is not big enough to be mentioned, so. um, and Thomas, it was you who picked the movie for this episode, and please, you took us to Japan. So please tell us about the movie you chose and why.
I picked the movie Onibaba by Kaneto Shindo, which is a film I love very much and I think is a very fascinating film. And funnily enough, because of course our viewers don't know this, but behind the scenes I kind of gave a couple of options of films I like to discuss, and there we figured out that actually calling ourselves World in a Frame is a bit strange since we haven't really covered anything outside of Europe and the US. I think it's a great pick that we go to Asia this time, and Kaneto Shindo is a pretty popular Japanese filmmaker, but kind of lower tier, like not as popular, of course, as Kurosawa or Osu or Kurosawa or so. But he's fairly popular, and this is by far, I think, his most famous film, the one he's most well remembered for. And it's a really fascinating film. I mean, to explain the basic story, maybe it's about these two women in Japan, and like I don't know, the 13th century or something, like a long time ago. And there is war, so the husband of the younger woman, who is also the son of the older woman, he has gone to war and left them two alone. And so, in order not to like literally starve, they have to make money, and they do so by killing samurai and selling their weapons and their clothes and whatever. Um, and then one day, another guy comes back from war who went to war with the son slash husband, and he tells them that he has died, but now he has come back and will take care of them or whatever. And the younger woman actually kind of falls in love, or at least starts to have sex with this guy, which the older woman wants to stop. She's very, I mean, we can get into the motivations of her later on. I think that's an interesting aspect to talk about. But in order to stop them, she takes the mask that she took from one of the killed samurai, which is this famous Oni mask. Oni is like a Japanese demon. I'm not super into the Japanese folklore and stuff, so please forgive me for any mistakes I might make. But yeah, she puts on this mask and goes into the rice field and like scares her away whenever she tries to go have sex with this other guy. And of course, the probably most infamous part of the film is the ending, where the daughter comes back home and the not the daughter, the younger woman, sorry, and the older woman is still wearing the mask because she can't get it off. Like there's some kind of weird curse or illness or whatever on her, and she can't get the mask off. So then she begs the young woman for forgiveness and tells her like, please help me and you can do whatever you want with him. So the the young woman, she breaks the mask off her face, which is such a brutal scene. It's wonderful, really. And we see that the old woman has like all these like blisters and her skin is almost rotten, which is the same way the samurai looked when she took the mask off of him. And then, of course, the older woman eventually falls into the same pit that she used to throw all the samurai in to kill them, and dies herself. And this is really funny. Then I stopped talking for a bit, but in German, and I don't know if there's an equivalent in English or other languages, but in German there is a very famous like idiom or saying, which is basically whoever digs a hole for someone else will fall into it themselves. So the film is kind of spoiled if you know this German saying. But yeah, now I'll give it off to you, and please let me know what you thought of this film.
It's better, maybe worse, as this film is often categorized as a horror film, and I'm not very fond of horror, but I think in the end I liked it. I think the production design is actually very great. You can feel these marshes, you can feel this hut where these women live. You can, the costumes, you can feel them. You can feel the rain. I also enjoy, you can also feel this pit. You have this opportunity to be immersed in this space that the film has created. And I also liked the way it was filmed. It's in black and white, and I think the film would have lost its power if it was shot in color. And also the sound design is remarkable. I think, for example, in the beginning, when these two women kill these two samurais, two soldiers, in this tall grass, and then they throw their bodies into pit, this shouting sound when it's done. Also, there's this probably some drums coming around, and in other key scenes, I think it creates tension, but it's not like orchestral music as we would expect in a Western film. It's more, it's Japanese, and I think it's traditional Japanese, and it also fits this story which is set in 14th centuries. So that's what I liked. I also liked the performances. I think they were very effective. They were able to convey this need for survival, this medieval, I guess, harshness, but viciousness. And yeah, that's what I thought about the film.
Yeah, I just found there was so much to enjoy about this film. Yeah, as I watched it a couple of weeks ago, so I completely forgot about the music. The music was so good. It just felt a little bit avant-garde. I don't know much about traditional Japanese music, but I would say it has this kind of jazzy quality as well. There was, yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed there's obviously some standout shots in this film, and just the kind of composition of some scenes is just really striking. A lot of it happens at night, so there's like a lot of black on the screen, and very impactful visually. I was thinking about there's a lot to think about in this film, but like I think one of the reasons why it's so impactful is that it's you're following this like a single storyline. I've just been reading about like the play Oedipus Rex, and it's, according to Aristotle, was this sort of perfect drama because of its simplicity. It has what's called unity of place, so it takes place in one location, and unity of action, so it has only a single storyline, and unity of time, meaning it all takes place, it's linear, and it takes place in quite a short space of time. That was quite interesting, and I sort of realized that these kinds of films or stories maybe that are so simple, my pen is stuck, that's why they're so impactful potentially. So there's, some things, if if there's an opportunity to talk about some of the historical context of this period, I found that really interesting. The mask, the role of the mask in this film, I guess I didn't really fully understand that at first, but I think there's a lot there. The ending, I thought it was ambiguous. I didn't understand that the woman fell into the hole. The hole itself is another sort of interesting sort of symbolic place in this film. But yeah, so I think at the end she's like, you don't know whether she fell in or whether she leapt over it. But I think there is a scream at that point, the same scream that they give at the beginning of the film, whether the soldiers fall in. So for me, it was ambiguous at least. But yeah, Rasmus?
Yeah. I must say that generally I'm very fascinated by Japanese movies. I think looking at the film history of Japan is very interesting, because they have this, they sort of have a film industry that in many ways were not influenced by outside forces, but then still again they sort of incorporate bits and pieces. But in general, their film language is very unique, and also it sort of reflects some of the Japanese society that in some ways it's very old and very traditional, and we also see this in this movie, of course, set in 14th century Japan, and with all these stories and legends and so on. I read that this one is. Not that I read. I watched an interview with the director on the Criterion Channel, where he talks about that this was actually sort of a modernization of a traditional Buddhist tale that would be told to children back in the days, and. But this sort of blending of folk tales and so on, as well as this being in many ways very modern, and being from here in the middle of the 60s, it sort of is foreshadowing the 60s revolutions and that we see all around the world at this time, and we see in many Japanese movies also how the younger generations are fighting for getting rid of some of the old traditions and norms, and I mean, this the whole sexual content and aspect in this movie is sort of also giving some clues to the sexual revolution that will come or that is going on in the 60s. So reading these aspects into the history, I think that's very fascinating. And Japanese movies are just, I mean, some of them are just like now we sort of laugh at Japanese game shows and so on, because they can be absolutely crazy. And at the same time that we know that Japanese society and culture is everything is very polite, and everybody is sort of their heavily traditions and norms. So there are these great opposites in Japanese society where that is very interesting. Also, people talk about, if you walk around in Tokyo, you have big skyscrapers and modern society, and then just beside of it there is an old temple several hundred years old. So these contrasts are very interesting, and I also think that this can be seen in this film, that it's sort of still traditional, but also there are these glimpses of the modernity that is coming. Yeah, I also thought that the ending was not clear to me what actually happened, and some of bits and pieces I read about it, they have the idea that the woman actually jumps over the hole and is not killed. But again, it's up to interpretation, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen this film for like a couple months, so I don't remember it quite as well. But as you already said, like there's the scream and all that, so I always interpreted it that way, at least, which to me makes sense for like this almost moral fable that it has this wonderful, ironic ending. But yeah, maybe I'm wrong, or at least it's more ambiguous than I thought. But I do maybe want to continue talking about what Philip already introduced, this concept of morality and justification and all that, because it's, of course, one of the themes of the movie. And I think what makes this question interesting, because, of course, it's easy to say, okay, they murder people, like, of course, that's morally wrong and all that. But it's at least implied that they literally have no other way to, like, survive in this current situation. And then it comes down to what I think the film is really mainly about, those very primitive human desires. And on, like, right off the top is, of course, survival, and in extension, like, food and water, which is the main motivator behind what most of them are doing. And the other motivator is the other great human desire, reproduction, of course. So both these drives behind human behavior are at the center of this film, I think. And yeah, that's the question, if that's a justification or not for their, which we would call immoral acts in other situations. So you kind of have to ask the question if it's justified for them to kill to survive. That's maybe the question that Philip already introduced, that I also don't know how to answer that. I think this is really the ambiguous part of the film, more so than the ending, I think.
Yeah, I think there's particularly one great scene that sort of really gets close to this question, and this is where the old woman has this when this samurai with the mask comes along, and she lures him into the hole where he drops down and is killed. And when she takes off his mask, she says that he is responsible for the killings of so many people, because he is this warlord and it's always everyone must remember constantly that this is set in this period of Japanese history where with great wars and so on at terrible costs for ordinary people, and she says to him that he is responsible for the deaths of so many people, and still she is standing on top of literally the bones of all of the victims that she lured down. So in this sense, she's both talking to him and she's talking to herself in this, but she is sort of, the circumstances has forced her to make to behave this way. But it's great this that there's this also ambiguity about who she's talking to.
This is, of course, also the scene where she then gets the mask and so on, which I think we can definitely read symbolic as like the face of the evil or all the bad things that she's done, which she wears to scare someone else, but she can't ever quite take off. Like, even when it's off, her face is still kind of demonic, to phrase it like that.
For me, I think that's the point about her, basically being judgmental while she's standing on top of a pile of corpses herself. I think, it's easy for us in our comfortable lives to make kind of moral judgments, particularly about, historical figures, when actually I think that scene maybe is a kind of caution on that front. For me, the real kind of moral conundrum in this film is, should she have put on the mask or not? We know that her motive is self-preservation, and she basically she is putting on the mask because she wants to dissuade this young woman from leaving her, basically, because she needs her for survival. And her son now being dead, they don't really have any link left. I guess the reason why, and this also comes back to, for me, when I was kind of reading about the story of the origin story of Onibaba, and what the mask represents, the fact that the mask does represent some evil force. But for me, the fact that she has this kind of turning point in the film where she confesses her true motivations to the young woman. And then she's able to get the mask off, actually. She doesn't end up in the hole. At that point, she takes the mask off. So is that sort of, she's now has an opportunity to redeem herself, perhaps. And that's, I think, that could be why some people think that she doesn't end up in the hole. That, you know, there's this distinct possibility that she leaps over it to continue, I guess, chasing the young woman, trying to convince her that that they should remain in the partnership at the beginning of the film. So that's what I was thinking about the mask. You know, the fact also that the soldier died in the mask, and he maintained that you know, the pretense that the mask allowed him to sort of perform. You know, that continued all the way to his death. So I was just kind of thinking about these things. I guess I'll leave it there.
I don't think the woman should have put on the mask. I think it's kind of, she should have seen a soldier die with it. And I think he had a disfigured face, so I can understand her desire to, you know, keep the relationship with her mother, with her daughter-in-law, to survive. So it kind of makes sense from that point. But yeah, I think she should have found another way to, you know, keep this relationship.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say, because I find this really fascinating in this discussion, that we were kind of hung up on the question whether or not they are justified in killing these people for self-preservation. But now that it's the question about stopping a relationship, we're suddenly like, nah, of course she shouldn't have done it. She should have found another way and such. When it's the same conundrum, only in her scheme to stop her daughter-in-law. No one dies but herself, maybe, in the end. I just found that fascinating, how we are judging these situations so almost counterintuitively.
When it comes to the mask, it's connected to, like, the devil. At least, like, the demons, at least in Japanese Buddhist tradition. And, you know, this tradition of, you know, belief that there are demons, I think it's quite, maybe not completely universal, but quite universal. So that's probably why we think about that more than we think about, you know, something related to more earthly stuff, like, you know, because, like, when it comes to her killing people, it's not like it's not connected to themes of you know, religion, I guess. And when I think about this masks, and it's more about, you know, high order stuff. So that's why we think about that maybe more. So,
But I mean, within the context of the film, it's at the very least ambiguous to use the word again, whether or not there actually is like any supernatural force or something, or if it's really just a mask that contracts like an illness or whatever, or if it's purely symbolic. I mean, it almost, I think, doesn't really matter to the film itself whether or not it's like a real demonic force or anything like that. I don't know. I think maybe it's just because we are more connected to the characters, or I mean, I can only speak for myself, but to me it's almost like more of a just moral intuition that, like, this is really messed up to scare your daughter-in-law away from someone she apparently fell in love with, whereas the killing can almost be justified as well. What you said, that the people they kill have also killed like a bunch of people and so on. It's a really good film, I think, to check your own moral standards by.
Yeah, and I also think that the motivation behind the mother is not only self-preservation, is it? Because it changes that when at first it's right that she says something along the lines that she would not be able to survive without the daughter-in-law, but later on it becomes pretty apparent that there's something about her getting older and sort of this sexual aspect, and she is envious or something about the younger woman, and sort of tries to get this guy to be sexually attracted to her, which doesn't work, and that's also a motivating factor. And I know that we can interpret in many ways, but the interview I saw with the director, he states that this is, I believe, or else I'm getting something confused, but he says that the daughter-in-law is not in love at all with this guy. It's pure sexual attraction and not so quite physical.
Yeah, I think that that scene where there's this dead tree, and the older woman goes and first witnesses the young woman and the guy, having sex or whatever, and she sort of flees in anguish, and you're like, what emotion is she experiencing? And then she kind of like wraps herself around this dead tree. It's a really good scene, and obviously, the tree being dead, I was like, it's probably, to make us think about how she's, reflecting these feelings that you were just describing, that she is aging, and she doesn't have this opportunity that the young woman does to seduce this man, because she's lost her sexual power. So yeah, I absolutely loved that scene. At first I was like, oh, she's really upset, and then I was like, oh. So, yeah.
That scene is after she has used the mask sometimes to scare the young woman, right?
I can't remember now. I thought it was before, but I could be wrong.
Because I believe that one of the points is that at first, when she has the mask on and sort of she gives this that this is wrong, you must not be with this guy. At first, it works for some time that the young woman then stays away, because she's afraid that this demon will somehow punish her. But in a matter of days, the sexual desire sort of overpowers her anyway. So even that trying to scare her with the mask, the sexual desire is still stronger than the consequences of following that urge.
I mean, it would be quite a boring movie if she didn't. And I was thinking as well, I think, Thomas, you're right about this moral, the way that we could accept the murder of the soldiers, but not what she did with the mask. So that totally confused me. But I think it must be something to do with the soldiers being nameless, and in this film just kind of peripheral characters, and well, not even characters. And then the young woman, it's sort of, we want her to kind of have this choice or to act on her own choices. And at the beginning, her sense, I really enjoyed her acting, by the way. At the beginning of the film, she seemed like so like bottling in her emotions and her grief at the death of her husband, and she kind of lets out this like I can't remember what she says, but some comment on the death, and it sort of bursts out of her, and then it's like she's closed up again. So, and the way that her feeling about the man that comes into the story, we're not clear at first what she thinks, and I really enjoyed that ambiguity. And I think that's potentially has something to do with why, for me at least, that was more of a moral, because she had, she may or may not have put on the mask, but she opted to put on the mask of the two different ways of which she could have handled that situation.
Also, another thing, apparently he said in an interview that the effects of a mask on those who wear it are symbolic of a disfigurement of the victims of atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in a way, there's this, it's another shadow of modernity. That, this traumatic effect of this tragedy. We see that, that's the way he also talks about it even in the 14th century.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the film had some thematic links to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. So that's interesting, because I was really struggling to understand that. But I guess just reading just what you said, Philip, and I have been reading a little bit about that, and then the period of censorship. So I was reading about that, and it came up that the kind of some of the consequences of that period of censorship for people who had radiation related injuries. There was this basically a big propaganda campaign after the war and during the period of US occupation where they were trying to convince the public that there was the whole notion that radiation causes injury and sickness is sort of a myth and everything like that. And that had this consequence that people who were, suffering injuries were sort of ostracized from society. Maybe that would have happened anyway if there was no censorship to some degree, but it's supposedly definitely didn't help because, it kind of gave rise to a lot of kind of rumors and things that weren't necessarily based in fact. And so I was kind of wondering if it was some commentary about that, and particularly when it comes to putting a mask on it and people who were affected by radiation sickness, in order to like find work or find a partner or whatever, they sometimes would try and hide the fact that they had suffered injuries. Just not
Of course,
sure.
the samurai with the mask also claims that he wears it because he has such a beautiful face and all that. It's really haunting.
Yeah. But Japan, I guess, is an interesting country. But for me, for example, it can be very hard to understand Asian movies, especially Japanese movies or Korean movies, because I completely do not understand their cultural code. But here, since Rusha mentioned, yeah, there's this unity of time and action and etc. Like, yeah, probably Greek drama in a way, Greek drama in a way. So it was much easier for me to understand it, and overall I liked it, despite potential reasons to hate it. But I also don't think it's like a horror film in the traditional sense. So it's more like period drama with horror elements or something like that. And also, I think it's kind of interesting to talk a little bit about the way the movie was made. Apparently, like to film these night scenes inside the huts, they had to put up screens to block the sun, and change the shot would require them to, move the screens. And it's also apparently the holes dug in the ground where they were located would immediately fill with water, so they had to build an artificial hole above the ground. And I think it's interesting. Yeah, also the filmmakers had a rule that if somebody left, they wouldn't get any pay, so that they motivated the crew to work. And I guess, like, since the film was filmed in this, Suzuki grass, somewhere near a lake, near Inba Swamp in Chiba Prefecture. So, and the film was for 3 months, the filming. And yeah, probably the conditions were hard. Apparently, the director built things like makeshift total water slide to, entertain the crew, which is, I guess, cool. Yeah, he probably had to go to great lengths to motivate people to work with him. So, yeah. Kevin, an interesting question. If you were asked to work as a crewman on this film for 3 months in these marshes, would you sign up? Or not?
Yeah, yes, of course. Like, definitely, I'd love to have worked on this film. My God.
Yeah, well, he also spoke about it in this interview that I saw, and his motivation behind it is that it sort of it created some sort of unity within the crew, that they know, even if you were a technician or an actor or him as a director, it was the same for all of them. They were stuck together and had to make this. So it created this sort of unity among them that he wanted to, and that if you wanted to break out of it, then of course it had some consequences, and his claim is that you sort of can sense it in the movie, that in the final result. I don't know about that.
And that also mirrors the story, of course, a little bit.
Yeah.
But this film also reminded me of something that I learned about in economics class, which is there was this economist called Thomas Malthus, and basically what he discovered is that in places and periods where people are very poor, they tend to get way more children, which seems kind of counterintuitive, because of course children are expensive and like more mouths to feed and so on. And as far as I remember, he explains it with like that it's almost an investment. Like the children will start to work very early, and when the parents are old, the children will take care of them. And so that was something I was thinking about while watching the movie, because it kind of explains this ultra sex drive, like because this guy who she has sex with, he's a total creep and jerk and seems like a very unattractive person in general. But that, in my opinion, explained it. And another thing that kind of fits into this theme of reproduction, I wonder if we are witnessing during the story the birth of the whole code of morality that you can't have sex before marriage, because that's something that the older woman kind of implements by using her power that she still has to oppress this young woman to not have sex with this guy. But of course, if it was her son-in-law, then it would be fine, because then she knows that she could reap some of the rewards, so to speak. And yeah, that was just something I was wondering if this is like actually historically maybe where this whole oppression of sex may come from these same fears that the old woman has.
When it comes to Malthus, I guess it's a good explanation, at least in Russia. If like 10 children in 19th century, for example, if 10 children were born, the family was lucky if like two or three of them were survived to mature age. So
Exactly, yeah.
that's
maybe that's the dark note to go into the recommendations, to be a bit more lighthearted.
yeah. So when it comes to a good film about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I guess it's Hiroshima Mon Amour by Ellen Renaer, the French-Japanese production. And it's a wonderful film, I guess. That is also, it was written by Marguerite Duras with this French, this Nouveau Roman influence in the film. Also, when it comes to horror films, social horror films, I can recommend Cargo 200 by Alexei Balabanov. I think it's a wonderful horror movie where there's this, he plays with genre, and the genre, he finds out that reality works in the same way the genre works. So I think it's
Okay, I guess I'll continue. I mean, the obvious recommendation is, of course, Kaneto Shindo's other big horror movie, Kuroneko, which I think isn't quite as good as Onibaba, but it's still very good. And for those keen viewers of you that have paid close attention, you will see that I have once again decorated my set by grabbing some random films that I thought about 5 minutes before we joined the call. We have Crime and Punishment, which should be self-explanatory. It's about crime and punishment. There are, of course, lots of versions of the story. I just happen to have the one by what's his name again? You know, the guy who did Shanghai Express, I think. Josef von Sternberg, of course. Then I have Polanski's Macbeth, but really this should be some other like Shakespearean drama, maybe even Throne of Blood, which is Kurosawa's Macbeth version, which also takes place in feudal Japan and so on. I think those two films are similar to an extent, at least. And then I have my wonderful prized possession of the Karl Theodor Dreyer collection, which when I saw it in my shelf, like just now, I thought, yeah, this could almost be like a Dreyer film if it was maybe a bit less graphic and so on. But he also loves to do these like small scale family dramas with like an ambiguously supernatural element and some sort of even. Especially in Odette, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, there's also this like love that gets oppressed by a parent and so on. I think someone who likes Onibaba will definitely get a kick out of Dreyer films. So yeah, that's my recommendations.
Yeah, And then I have to continue because I also wanted to mention Throne of Blood, but actually because it's once again one of these movies where sort of this spiritual world, or there is this element of the supernatural that comes in, but. The one movie that I will recommend is one of the most crazy movies I have ever seen. And it's called The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On. And it's actually a documentary about this Japanese guy who has he was a soldier, and now he travels around Japan and trying to, because there was some horrible stuff going on that was suppressed. They didn't talk about, and I will not spoil what it is. But then he seeks out some of these old military figures, lieutenants and so on, and wants them to admit what happened. And if they don't want to talk about it or will not admit it, then he starts beating them, and it's absolutely it's a crazy film, but very very interesting and entertaining, and says a lot about Japanese culture and society. So and the effects of war on people. So that will be my recommendation.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Shakespeare, Thomas, because I was thinking, I don't know why it came into my mind just thinking about how, this is, I thought of it more as like a, not necessarily a horror story as well. I think there's some, there's an interesting discussion there as to today it's kind of characterized as a horror film, Onibaba. I mean, but it's not horror in the way that we would sometimes think about it. I suppose it's quite a big genre, but just the way that Shakespeare sometimes like uses sort of like ghosts and things like that. I guess that's why it kind of came into my mind. But then I was like, okay, I'm doing this like classic thing of just relating it back to the Western canon, which because I have no point of historical reference in Japan or like wider Asian culture. So sorry about that. So yeah, I was thinking about that, and just reading about this. Yeah, I also watched a couple of films from around that time. I did watch Woman in the Dunes as well. I really enjoyed it. I was thinking about all the films that I watched earlier in my life, post-war Japan films, and thinking I should probably rewatch them. So that's a task I've set for myself, because, as far as I understand, something like Rashomon is much better understood if you understand the period in which the film was produced. So and then there's this whole idea also of like, if you watched a film like 20 plus years ago, can you even say that you've watched it? Because it's so much time has passed, I can barely remember what happens. And if I watch it now, I've definitely had this experience with watching films at different eras of my life and just like having a completely different impression, which I've been really enjoying. One of the good parts about getting older, by the way, there's a lot of good things about it, but that's one of them. So yeah, so that's what I was thinking about. That's some of the things I would recommend.
So I hope everybody enjoyed listening to this episode. So bye for now, and remember to like and subscribe.
Bye.
I
Bye.